All right, everyone here? I'm on a book. So see that some of them have two. Some people have two books. Okay, if everyone could please take your seats so we could get started. Welcome, everyone. Let's get started right here. Okay. Welcome to Sinai and Civics, the new course, a 4-week course. This is a non-consecutive course. So it's going to be every other week. A bottle of water here. So we all watched last night the beautiful fireworks. Was that mine? Oh, you now. I had one somewhere. I don't know where it went. Thank you. Beautiful fireworks, all the flyovers, all the celebration. For those who asked if I watch fireworks, I literally just walked outside my house. I saw fireworks in that direction, in that direction, in that direction, that everywhere I looked, there are fireworks. I had a beautiful show here. I didn't have to go anywhere. Actually, it's a nice view at nighttime. So we all watched a celebration of 250 years. Now, this is a remarkable achievement. 250 years. But there's much to go still. To give you a context, each of the temples in Israel, one stood for 410 years and the other stood for 420 years. So we're just reaching about the half point of what the temples in Jerusalem stood for. Relevant to this time of year, remembering the destruction of the temples during these 3 weeks. But for Jewish people, America has been the center of who we are for the last 250 years at least, and more. And as Jewish people have been in the center of this country. As a matter of fact, up until a few years ago, the largest Jewish population in the world was in the United States. That's been now taken over by Israel, or at least close to it. But United States holds the largest Jewish population, which means that just within a short period of time, what took us 2,000 years to populate the rest of the rest of the world, within 250 years, we've populated just this one country. And there's a good reason for that, as we'll see. Because Jewish people have much to gain and much connected with this country. So they say there was a Jew. His name was Shmerel Katzenellenbogen. He arrived at Ellis Island and he asked his friend, what would be a good American name for me? I want a good American name. Says, I want to be Jewish, but it should be more American. So he says, how about Sam Cohn? That would be a good Jewish name. So he began walking up Ellis Island and he says, Sam Cohn, Sam Cohn, Sam Cohn. And as he is walking up, the goes up to the desk and he says, what's the name again? They ask, what's your name? Sean Ferguson. So they say, all right, Sean Ferguson, we got you. Okay, so there's many cute stories of Jews coming across Ellis Island, and names changing in all different ways. But this is our story. So let's all talk about where it started. It started with a rickety ship battered by storm and heavy with weight of hardship and fear. It sailed into the bustling harbor of what was then known as New Amsterdam in September of 1654. On board, there were 23 souls. Excuse me one second. Just putting up the Zoom here. On board, there were 23 souls, not explorers seeking gold or merchants laden with goods, but these were refugees with just the clothes on their back and a story of survival. These were the first Jews to step foot in what would eventually become known as New York City. Who are these people? They were families, men, women, children. They were carrying a long history of suffering and exile. Their ancestors were Jews who were forced to convert to Christianity in Portugal at the end of the 15th century. Tenaciously, they held on to their Jewish traditions. They remembered for generations. Many of them were able to leave the Iberian Peninsula around a century later and settle in Amsterdam, which at that time granted the freedom to return to their Jewish faith openly. Some of you remember we had a course on Jewish personalities. We talked a little bit about those that settled in Amsterdam. The Jews of Amsterdam flourished, many of them deeply involved in international trade, but when Dutch conquered Brazil in 1630, many of them moved to Brazil. But in 1654, the Portuguese reconquered Brazil, and that brought along with them the dreaded Inquisition. We now have a Brazilian in the family, as you know. So it started in Portugal. They went to Amsterdam, and then going on and settling in Brazil. But now, once the Inquisition came, they fled. The persecution that they once thought they were fleeing from now reached them in the Southern American hemisphere. And this small group of 23 were among the last to escape. Their ship was in turmoil, blown off course. Their voyage turned into a nightmare. They were robbed by pirates, stripped them of what they had. But finally, they reached the harbor of New Amsterdam in 1654. They had no money left, so that wasn't very welcoming for those there. And the director general, you may know this name, Peter Stuyvesant, right? Stuyvesant. The famous college named after him, right? And many things that's named after Stuyvesant, right? So he, at the time, he was the colonel director, and he jailed them, threw them off into prison, and then he wrote to the Dutch, asking them permission to expel the quote-unquote deceitful race. Back in Old Amsterdam, the Jewish brethren, some who were there at that time, began to petition for them, and they reached out to those in Holland And they said that if we are in New Amsterdam, we are under the colony of Holland, and so therefore we should have the rights of the Dutch, and therefore we should have the Jewish rights just as they do there. So in 1655, the company relented and granted the poor refugee Jews permission to reside in New Amsterdam. And so eventually that is where they settled. The fact that some of the Jews of Amsterdam Jews were major investors in the company, of course, was a big help, knowing that they could probably bring some more money to this country. Now, they weren't immediately granted equal rights. At first, they weren't allowed to operate a public synagogue, but they made do with worshiping in a private home. And they formed the synagogue, which became known as She'erit Israel. She'erit Israel, which means the sort of the leftovers of Israel, those who have the escapees of Israel. And this was the first Jewish community in America, one that continues to exist today. Eventually, there was a Jew in late 1655 named Abraham de Lusana, a Sephardic merchant, who brought a Torah. Then it was a Sephardic Torah garbed in a beautiful purple garb, and he brought this Torah to the United States, which would become the first Torah to reach these shores. What began as begrudging tolerance gradually grew into something quite radical acceptance. After the war for America, for the independence of America, the ratification of its Constitution, as George Washington worked to promote the new Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And we have here a Constitution. You want to get up and show us the Constitution? We have one here.
This is the Declaration.
Oh, it's the Declaration of Independence. Okay. All right. Close enough. You have the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so we have the Declaration of Independence here with us. So then came, when he was working on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, he wrote a letter to the Hebrew congregation. President George Washington wrote a letter to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, laying out America's policy towards the Jews and religious freedom in general. There were many religious groups and local governments in Newport that represented the president. Among them was Moses Seixas, the warden of a congregation of Yeshuat, Israel, who wrote a letter on behalf of the Jewish community. And he expressed the hope that the new nation will grant all citizens respect and freedom, regardless of their religious beliefs. Washington's response was much more than Moses Seixas had asked for. All he was asking for is just give us respect and freedom. The response was much more than that. Let's take a look at text number 1. This was a letter from George Washington to the Hebrew congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, on August 18th, 1790. The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike liberty of conscience and immunities of citizenship. It is now no more that toleration is spoken of as if it was by the indulgence of one class of people that another enjoyed the exercise of their inherent natural rights. For happily the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection shall demean themselves as good citizens, and giving it on all occasions their effectual support. Now listen to what he says. May the children of the stock of Abraham, who dwell in their land, continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while every other one shall sit in safety under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid. This is a very pivotal moment in the Jewish history. Well, Washington, what he did until that point in history, the Jewish people were at best accepted as tolerance. We can tolerate Jews. Now it's going not from tolerance, but to acceptance. You are accepted as part of our people, as part of our country. Back in the day, Jewish people were limited to what they were allowed to do as Jews, what type of businesses they could operate, what type of places they could go to. He is now saying you are equal citizens. Mm-hmm. It's also interesting if you take a look at the end of the letter, where he references, he says, every man shall sit safely under his own vine and fig tree. This is actually a reference to a verse from Micah, which refers to the time of great Jewish prosperity, like in the time of King Solomon and the time of when Mashiach comes. That they will sit under their vine and fig tree and no one shall be afraid. And so this is a very foundational document of religious freedom of the United States, and sometimes even cited multiple times in the U.S. Supreme Court rulings. This was very monumental. But Washington was now promising that Jewish people the right to indulgence granted to them by the goodwill of a foreign body, and they would have a natural right just as anyone else, just as anyone of Christians or other beliefs that they had. Other countries have since imitated this policy to an extent, as Washington advised that they should. Yet the Jewish experience in America remains unique. It's unique to the size of the Jewish community, as I said, far larger than anywhere else in the diaspora, and also terms of success that Jews have enjoyed in America. May the children of the stock of Abraham, as he said, have blessings. We have been very successful in many ways with the farchava, with the broad enjoyment of what we have here. People from other countries come to, and they come to the Chabad and say, wow, sitting here on acres of land, and you have a shul this size, and this is small compared to what other shuls are today. I mean, you don't see such things anywhere else, aside from maybe Israel. So that's not to say that there isn't anti-Semitism in this country. And even from some official places, you have, even going back historically, you have the famous Ulysses S. Grant saga, where he put out certain laws expelling Jews from district under his command in the Civil War, which eventually that all changed with President Lincoln. So it's not to say that there wasn't any struggle. There were struggles that the Jewish people went to, and we continue to go through those. But as a whole, this is where we are today. Now, I'm assuming if I look around the room, most of you are probably have some sort of descendants, refugees. As those who were here the last yesterday, I talk about my history. I said I'm a born and bred American. My father's a born and bred American. His father was a born and bred American. His father was a born and bred American, and his father was a refugee. So it's fifth generation American. Now, for some of you, that may not be the extent, but eventually, at some point, we are all refugees from other countries. Between 1880 and 1924, more than 2 million Ashkenazi Jews came to America seeking refuge from the pogroms and poverty of Tsarist Russia. Another about 200,000 Jews came to America afterwards, and of course in the 1970s through the 1990s, you had about 500,000 Jews from the former Soviet Union who came to this country. So over time, Jews came to this country over and over, and like I said, making it the largest Jewish population for many years. So again and again, America has become a haven for our people, destitute and desperate. Jews came here with a little bit, but their faith, resilience, and hope for a new beginning. So why is it that we flourish in America? Looking at me, give me in one word. Give me one word. What we have in America that's different than anywhere else. Freedom, okay, and give me more one words. What? I can't hear what you're saying. Capitalism, okay. Trust,
Yeah.
okay. 10 Commandments. Well, 10 Commandments is from God.
Yeah, that's the norm.
So I'll give you three things that we have. The number one is one that you mentioned, is freedom. Okay, unprecedented freedom. It's the first and obvious reason that Jewish success is in America. America offered Jews unprecedented freedoms. This is something that we take for granted, but the reality is that that's something that never existed for Jewish people before that. Aside for Israel, and the Jewish people living in Israel, there's no such thing as autonomy to do what you want, how you want, to live free just like any other citizen. Number two, meritocracy, which is a merit-based society where you have the right to become who you are. You have the right to build up yourself, to become what you want to be. America offered that culture where merit is valued over pedigree, where people aren't just chosen because you have a family lineage, but you got to prove yourself. And if you prove yourself, you can become whatever you want. And then there's another aspect, and this is perhaps the most important, and that's shared values. And this is one we're going to focus primarily over the next 3 weeks. And that is that America and Jewish people have many shared values. For starters, Judaism's foundation lies in the belief of the one God who created the universe with a purpose, faith in his love and care for his people. He created the commitment to Torah that he gave us, and he guides us. Sharing this basic values is a recipe for success and for a rewarding relationship. For now, 250 years later, we explore that relationship as what was referred to by many, including the Rebbe, who referred to this so many times. All right, no worries. We'll clean it up later. Mazel tov. That's what you say, mazel tov. Okay, don't worry. We'll clean it later. As long as no one's getting up or walking around. America is a Malchus Shel Chesed. What's a Malchus Shel Chesed? Means a country of kindness. This is referred to by many great sages, and it's a place that's kind to its citizens, and we have to be forever grateful for that. It doesn't mean it's a perfect country, but overall, it's a country of kindness. And so it was with that families that began with crowded tenements could now, within a generation, own a business, send their children to college. They could become professions in law, medicine, academia, and so on. So in this course, I want to get to the root of the very special Jewish-American relationship. We're going to devote 4 lessons to that. Number 1, the biblical inspiration of America's founders, what America means for Judaism. And that's what we'll talk about today. The biblical inspiration of America's founders. Number two, the Jewish roots of the truth that all men are created equal. And we'll see that this comes from Jewish sources. Number three, the Jewish roots of the American dream of personal prosperity. And number four, the separation of powers and its Jewish parallels as well. And so these things that are perhaps often overlooked are things that we're going to look at. So let us begin with telling the story of the Pilgrims. We're going to focus on twofold. First of all, any questions before I continue on? No? Good. Either good or bad.
Or change.
Either that means no one understands anything, therefore you have no questions. So we're going to examine American civics that doesn't begin in Assembly Room in Philadelphia where the Declaration of Independence was drafted, as we saw the Declaration of Independence, but rather it actually begins many years before that with the very Pilgrims who arrived in this country. So we're going to watch a little video that's going to give us a little background about the Pilgrims and what that means for us.
Through centuries, Europeans crossed the Atlantic waves, seeking gold, glory, France, and fortunes. But the winter of 1620 brought a different kind of people. Souls could risk everything for the chance to worship freely. The Pilgrims were English separatists, a radical breakaway from the Church of England. They believed worship drifted far God's original design, put them at odds with England's religious rule and tyrannical monarchy, and inspired their perilous journey. The Pilgrims embraced the biblical idea that the Creator is intimately involved in the details of life. They saw evidence of this everywhere. A sudden wind saved their ship. The discovery of unexpected food. A Native American who spoke their language. Furthermore, Pilgrims and later American founders saw their story as a modern parallel of sorts to the Jewish exodus from Egypt. England is like an Egypt, its king and pharaoh. Their voyage mirrored the exodus. The Atlantic crossing and early hardships were similar to the Jewish cycling.
It's not. It's too busy here. People can't watch. Yes. We'll just do it later. Sorry, I'm going to back this up a little bit.
God's original design. This put them at odds with England's religious rule and tyrannical monarchy, and inspired their perilous journey. Pilgrims embraced the biblical idea that the Creator is intimately involved in the details of life. They saw evidence of this everywhere. A sudden wind saved their ship. The discovery of unexpected food. A Native American who spoke their language. Furthermore, the Pilgrims and later American founders saw their story as a modern parallel of sorts to the Jewish exodus from Egypt. England, like an Egypt, its king like a pharaoh. Their voyage mirrored the exodus. The Atlantic crossing and early hardships were similar to the Jews' Sinai trek, and America was the promised land. Enduring a brutal winter, losing half their group to disease and starvation, the survivors managed to produce a successful harvest. Echoing biblical traditions, they celebrated with a feast of thanksgiving to God. They considered their survival and success divine kindness, worthy of mutual gratitude, and the belief that evolved the American holiday of Thanksgiving. Pilgrim leader William Bradford recorded a founding vision for all future Americans. His words, adapted here into modern English, closely paraphrase King David. May not, ought not, the children of these fathers rightly say, our fathers were English who crossed this great ocean, or are close to perish in this wilderness. But they cried out to the Lord, and he hoped their face and grew on their suffering. Praise the Lord, for he is God, and his mercy endures forever. Yes. Loving kindness and its identification, the Jewish story, that self-perception, saved by God, whose children would remember their saga. They should have more than 50 years later, immediately after adopting the Declaration of Independence, the Continental Congress appointed Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams to design a national seal. The original proposal depicted Moses parting the Red Sea, Pharaoh's army drowning, and God's lighting a pillar of fire. The motto, rebellion, kindness, is obedience to God. The design was ultimately shelved due to its complexity, that it almost became the seal on all documents of the American government, reflects how deeply the Pilgrims' biblical worldview influenced the founding of America.
Okay, so we saw some important points there. Number one, we saw that the Pilgrims, they had some religious values, and a lot of what they did was based on religious values, and they also saw whatever they did was considered divine providence. They saw everything that happened as godly. That's how the holiday of Thanksgiving came about. Maybe that's why so many Jews like to celebrate Thanksgiving. Aside from the fact that turkey is kosher, but also because the source of it is a very meaningful one. That the whole idea is giving thanks to God. And they also saw themselves as the Exodus. They saw that the Exodus, we're calling here Exodus 2.0. They saw it as another version of the Exodus. And so this is striking how the Pilgrims, they understood their own story, not just as a group of English dissenters looking for a new home, but they saw themselves as if they're the journey. They saw themselves in a biblical lens. Like we're going through what the Jews in Egypt are going through. And we're leaving the tyrants like Pharaoh, and now we're going towards the promised land. And so they saw this at the promised land. And even in the hardships, they always said we have to trust God and we're going to get there. And the hardships they just saw as if it's the Jews who were 40 years in the desert, going through all the trials and tribulation that they were going through. So they saw we too are going through those things that the Jewish people were going through. So this profound identification is not something we're projecting back onto them in hindsight, but it's in their own words. And as you just read, I'm not going to read the whole thing, and it's difficult to read anyway. It was in the video. Text number 2. This is from William Bradford, right? So, but he talks about the children. Our fathers rightly say our fathers were Englishmen across the great ocean. Talks about the Lord has redeemed to deliver us from the hand of the oppressor and wandered into the desert and wilderness. Let us give thanks to the Lord for his loving kindness. So the Pilgrim story, they saw it as a narrative of redemption that was following the biblical model. Their children, by which means are the Americans, they sought the history in this way as well. That their story of the people saved from God of oppression, brought through the wilderness to this new home, to this new promised land called America. And so this is the bedrock of the Pilgrims and their self-perception of themselves, how they saw themselves. And this identification where we talked about the Declaration of Independence, where they're looking for the seal. And so this is when Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams, where they wanted to put together the seal, and they brought these biblical parallels into the seal, which you can see in your figure 1.2 on page 7. This is what the seal was. We saw it in the video as well. So imagine that. So here you have the seal of the nation, and which will be used on every document, would depict Moses crossing over the sea, holding his staff, crossing over the sea with the pillar of smoke and fire, leading the Jewish people through the sea. Now, didn't happen because of technical reasons. They said it's too complicated. We need a very simple image, and they settled on the eagle. But nevertheless, the fact that this image was proposed by the founding fathers shows the enduring power and the relevance that they saw. It should also note the reverse seal appears on. Do I have a dollar bill? Anyway, you know the dollar bill, right? And
The pyramid in the star.
the pyramid, yeah. Now I know that there's all kinds of theories with the pyramid, but the truth of the matter is that what the pyramid really is supposed to represent is it symbolizes a divine guidance. You have the eye on top, which is divine guidance watching over the nation. The eye of providence, which is proposed as an element of the as a first commitment. In other words, as the first dollar, that's the eye that's watching over the pyramid representing the country. And of course, every bill says, "In God we trust." Now, if you take a look at page number 8 in your book, these are just a few things that we see how these symbols represented their beliefs. Yale University. This is Yale University. There's Hebrew words. What does it say? Urim v'tumim. Anybody a Yale graduate here? Any Yale graduates? No? The words in Hebrew say Urim v'tumim, which they translated to be light and truth, which is whatever, but it represents the godly name that was on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. Although they wanted it to be translated the words light and truth, which is lux et veritas, right? Is light and truth. Probably not pronouncing it correctly, but in the Latin. What? Okay. I'll take your word for it. Then you have the Liberty Bell. You see the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. What does it say? It says, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all its inhabitants thereof." That is a verse from Leviticus 25:10. Then you have the U.S. Supreme Court building. On top of the building, they have all types of figures. And right sitting there in the center, the figure is Moses, depicted holding the 2 tablets representing the 10 Commandments. You have the U.S. House of Representatives. As well, you have Moses depicted in the center, facing forward with the 11 portraits on the other side, one of them being Maimonides as well. So clearly, you could see what this founding of the nation represents. Now, before the Pilgrim Fathers ever landed in America, they had already taken their first official political step in 1620, which was already aboard the ship called the Mayflower. Very good. The settlers would establish the New Plymouth, and they wrote and signed an agreement. Now, this is very important that you may not realize. They wrote this agreement, which they referred to as a compact, which made a pact, what we call today modern English a pact. Text number 3, the Mayflower Covenant. I'm going to try, I'm probably going to mess up on some of these words. These are old-fashioned words, but in the name of God, amen. We whose names are underwritten do by these present solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by the virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and officers from time to time as shall be thought most meet and covenant from the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. Okay, now the details of it is not as relevant, is not as important, but the point of it is, number one, they start off with the name of God, Amen. And then they make a covenant. What is the idea of a covenant? So let's take a look at what Lord Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of England, wrote as follows. Text number 4. Covenant is one of the 3 broad types of political system. Polities come into being of one of 3 ways: conquest, slow growth and development, or formal conscious decision. The first tends to produce a hierarchical society, the second an organic one, and the third society as covenant. Conquest leads to hierarchical societies that are a ruler, a court, an administrative and priestly elite, and beneath them the great mass of people. The key biblical example is Egypt of the pharaohs. In hierarchy, power is structured as a pyramid. It's not accidental that the pyramids of Egypt survive as symbols of the empire. More modern examples include Napoleonic France and 19th century Prussia. The second kind of society is one that emerges from long custom and habituation, is usually called organic. In organic society, things are there because they always were. Their origins tend to be lost in the midst of time. Organic societies have customs, rituals, uniforms, ceremonials that cast the aura of antiquity and inevitability over the present. Power is less a matter of pyramids than the center of periphery. Those who wield power meet in clubs, schools, universities, regiments, and teams. They cultivate an air of amateurism and frown on meritocracy, effort and enthusiasm. Roger Scruton's England and Elegy is a prose poem to the kind of society. Thank you. The third kind, covenantal society, is formed in a conscious act of new beginnings. The parties come together to achieve what neither can achieve alone. The key element is covenant, is neither power nor the past, but a verbal declaration, a mutual binding promise. Covenantal politics is supremely a politics of the word given, the word received, the word honored in trust. So you have 3 types of society and values. You have what he's saying is the first of those violent conquests where you impose on one another. Then you have the organic society where it sort of lets itself play out over years and eventually comes into play. It's kind of like if you want to build a business. So some businesses are built on where you have one boss. He has the game plan put together and he says, this is what we're doing, and then hires people to follow through with that business plan. Then they'll make a mission statement based on what the boss decides what the mission statement is. Then you have certain businesses that come about where you're sort of doing some kind of stuff and you're sort of starting to sell a little of this, a little of that, and then sort of comes together, and then once things start forming, then you're creating that mission statement. So that's the other kind of society. But the third one is the covenant. The covenant is where we're coming together and we're saying that we're making a pact. We're going to follow what we're promising to each other. We're giving our word, we're giving the promises, and that's what's going to guide and lead what happens. And in this case, the word is coming from God, and we are taking upon ourselves to keep that word. So they got this notion of a covenant from the Torah. Where do we have the concept of a covenant? It comes from the Torah. the Torah tells about multiple different covenants between the people and God, most prominent of which is the covenant that established a nation, the covenant in Mount Sinai between God and the Jewish people. For the entire event, the giving of the Torah was God's offer to the Jewish people as a covenant. And what do the Jewish people say? Text 5. God said, now if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasure from among all peoples. For all the earth is mine. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The people all respond in unison and say, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do. See, most people, they look at Judaism as the Torah as a book of rules. God is telling us what to do. But that's really a misinterpretation of what it is. It's not a book of rules. It's not a rule book. It's a covenant. A covenant means God says, you are my people and I am your God. And we're forming this covenant together. And that covenant could never cease and never will cease. And we have to do our part. And God says, well, if you're going to sort of try and leave away from that covenant, I may have to, impose some things in society that will get you back on track. But it's not per se, well, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to punish you. God is simply saying, if you're veering away from the covenant, I just have to get you back on track. So God, through Moses, is laying out the terms of the covenant, and the Jewish people say, and God says, you will be my people, my nation, and we're going to get through this together. So, and they responded, Kol Asher Hashem Vayomer Yachtav. They said together in unison, the Torah God says, Naaseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear. Text number 6. When the Jewish people accepted God's rule at Mount Sinai, they did so joyfully as one, as the verse states. The people all responded in unison. In doing so, they even committed to serving as guarantors for each other. So they didn't only enter a covenant, but they answered in unison. They entered this covenant with each other as well, saying, between us, we also have this covenant. In addition to their personal responsibility to keep their covenant, they accepted as well responsibility for each other as well. And so this is what's known as the concept of arvus, being an arev, being responsible for one another. And this forged a society. It gave the Jewish people a shared identity, a set of values, a common mission that bound them together. And only after the societal foundation was established did the Jewish people then go on to found their homeland and much later established a political state and institutions with government. But it had to start with the covenant saying that we are in this together and we are in this for the long. Now, going to the American covenant, which we mentioned earlier. So let's take a look. So the Pilgrims saw themselves in this way as well. Let's take a look at Lord Jonathan Sacks, The Home We Build Together, text 7. It was America that covenantal politics received its most complete expression. The first formal act of the Pilgrim Fathers was the Mayflower Pact of 1620. We whose names are underwritten solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, right? The presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together in a civil body politic. Aboard the Arabella in 1630, John Winthrop similarly declared, we are entered into the covenant with him, God, for this work. The United States is unique among modern politics in having, modern polities and having the same structure as the Bible. So as they begin to build this new world, they sought to follow the biblical example. First comes the civil body politic. We have to have our shared values, our shared principles, signed by all 41 adult males who were part of that group. They made that pact together and they said, now, once we have our foundation now we could start to build a society. So this moral and social foundation was laid, and then they could go about the practical business of founding this country. And so this did not die with the Pilgrims. It carried forward and it became the intellectual and spiritual DNA of the American founding. Declaration of Independence of 1776 was a covenantal document. It laid out a mission statement for the values of America. It wasn't just rules, but this is the values of America, which sets the form of the government. A covenant is not a one-time event. It's a document that can be signed, and it's a mutual loyalty of commitment. We also see this from Abraham Lincoln. Okay, we'll skip it. It's an appendix. We'll let it go. So the most effective way, and so basically what we're saying is you have to have the society, you have to have the foundation before the government comes along. So the most effective way to support the struggling community, strengthen its society, is through vibrant on-the-ground work, community institutions, local charities, and grassroots organizations of people helping each other, so that they are as well, the people are coming in with this as well. So that's why we say it's we the people, right? That's what it says in the document. We the people can address our problems at a communal, interpersonal level. So what we're seeing is that the foundations of the United States were consciously and deliberately modeled after the foundations of biblical Judaism. The founders of the country, they were not Jewish. They adhered to a different religion, but their fundamental values were biblical. They had faith in a loving, benevolent God, the dignity of the individual created in God's image, the idea of a nation founded on a covenant of shared principles. These are all things that are biblical concepts. And thus the study of American civics is not just a secular exercise, but it is a Jewish learning experience, which is what we're doing here today. And that's what we're going to try and gain from this course. And so when we look as well at the Jewish community, let's take a look at the Jewish community. We're also going through some of our struggles. We have unprecedented number of young Jews who feel alienated from our shared value and heritage. And perhaps if we want to strengthen their connection, it has to as well be by the connection to our own covenant, which we have as a Jewish people. The values, the practices, and the very essence of Judaism, both individually and collectively, reconnecting to that covenant that we have, if we want to reconnect the next generation. So living Judaism in an authentic way means that we are reconnecting with that covenant that we have. And that is how we could re-inspire the generation. If we're moving away from that covenant, then we lose who we are as a people. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
When I look at Cuba, it's evil and I'm down bad, it's not you. To realize what it's saying. Is it a Cuba a covenant?
In a way, yes. A ketubah is basically a covenant. It's the husband and wife promising to take care of each other. It's a contract, yeah. But it's basically, in a certain way, it's a covenant where you're coming together for each other, yeah.
God is the supreme Lord being as well. It's God that is working with us to imbue with us a certain morality that is giving us the ability to move forward. Because without morality, you will
100%.
So don't remember, a little dispute.
100%. And we're gonna talk about that over the next few weeks. Yes, that's part of what we're gonna look at. What are the Jewish morals and values and how those were adapted by this country as well. Yes. Anyone else?
By the way, as a little point of order for those who might not know, Thomas Jefferson knew the topic. He wrote a treatise on one of the books of the Talmud, Baba Kama, and it's in the Library of Congress.
Well, thank you. Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, at a different time, we could definitely go over it. Okay, so now let's talk about Jewish life in America. So we talked about some of the great blessings America has been to Jews in a material sense. They provided us with unprecedented levels of safety and acceptance. Now, let's discuss what America means for Judaism in a Jewish practice sense, or some may call it in a religious sense. It's important to state in the outset what America does not mean for our Judaism. America does not mean that we change who we are as a Jew at all. And for a long time, there was this notion among Jews who immigrated that America is different. And in a most Yiddish saying, America is anders. America is different. That we lived one way in Europe, the shtetl was one way of living, and that was a life that we're leaving behind. And now we're coming to the new, what some refer to as the golden Medina, the golden country. So we're leaving the old world, the shtetls, the Europe, and it simply doesn't apply to the new world of America. And for many, they saw that being that America is a land that you could succeed, it's a land of opportunity, and that you could be a full participant in American society, that therefore you have to shed some of your elements of Judaism because we want to integrate in the society that we have. And so for some people, they drop some or water down some of their Jewish laws and traditions, and we have to smooth it out a little bit in order to fit in. When the previous Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, known as the Rebbe Rayatz, arrived on the shores of America in 1940. He claimed America is nicht anders. America is not different. That's a picture of a Jewish school in Minnesota in 1931, where you can see that they're writing Hebrew on the blackboard. I don't have blackboards anymore, I don't think. And he insisted here too, in this land of freedom and modernity, that we can and must live full, unapologetic Jewish lives, just as our ancestors did for thousands of years. And we see a text. We're a little low in time, but we'll read this quickly. It's on page 26. Yeah, we're skipping a little bit to the appendix. This is on the 9th of Adar 2, which marks a historic day when my saintly father-in-law arrived in America 30 years ago in 1940. This day, the 9th of Adar, just as a side note, it's personally a special day for me. It's a day when I had my bris, and when I was named after the previous Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak. And this is the reason for that, because this is the day that he made this historic statement. In the context, it's worth recalling the unforgettable words that the Rebbe said immediately upon setting foot in American soil. My coming here with God's help is that I may, with God's kindness, continue my work, the dissemination of the Torah, fear of heaven, divine service, and my activities on behalf of the welfare of all our Jewish brethren here in this land as well. My goal is to generate an awakening and a movement for the study of Torah, so that Torah should illuminate the Jewish street and home. At the time, many prominent lay leaders expressed great doubts as to whether this task, which a Jewish leader of the generation has set for himself, could be achieved. However, this does not weaken his resolve. On the contrary, it only increases self-sacrifice for this goal. His answer to all doubts was simple: America is no different. The same Torah mitzvah is valid for Jews everywhere. They're also valid in America. And since in America too, Jews must live according to the Torah and educate their children in the path of Torah mitzvahs, God has certainly given the abilities to carry this out, as that is required is the appropriate determination of the proper, serious, and heartfelt approach. Now, 30 years later, we clearly see the extraordinary success that can be achieved with God's help in the realms of disseminating Torah. Fear of having a proper education, as long as one desires, truly acts with self-sacrifice. Now, I should also point out, as I did those who were here Friday night, the previous Rebbe was one of the very few people who were granted an honorary citizenship from the United States. And not only was he granted an honorary citizenship, they actually came to him, to his residence in 770 Eastern Parkway, to give him the citizenship. And if I have a few minutes at the end of the class, I will show you the video of that, which was actually taken a color video for 1940s, very rare to have a full color video. But this is a radical statement in its time. History has shown it to be a reality. It's abundantly clear that being proud and successful American and fully observant Jew are not contradictory at all. And you can have both. On the contrary, we've been discussing our core value of Torah values could inform and sustain the best American ideals. I always like to give the example of the largest camera store in Manhattan is B&H Photo, and they have the famous advertisement open every day except for Friday night and Saturday. And yet it's the largest photo store in Manhattan. So B&H Photo, right? You've heard of it. So the Rebbe took this further. Not only does America reduce the fundamental obligations to keep Torah mitzvahs and live a fully Jewish life, but to be a positive inspiration and hold them firmly, and that can spur our spiritual growth. The Rebbe expanded on these three aspects of American society: this foundation of freedom, democracy, and individualism, which we talked about before. And he said that just because we are a small minority living in a free society, it doesn't mean that we have to maintain it doesn't mean that we have to live up to what society tells us. On the contrary, we could maintain a distinct identity, and individuals are encouraged to act on their own initiative. Makes it easier for Jews to live as a Jew the way we should, with their convictions. A Jew openly could follow the principles of Torah, and we should boost our Judaism. And this is true for Jews in all areas, from those serving in Congress, to those in the private sector, to those anywhere else. As those who were here Friday night, I talked about how my great uncle was a U.S. Senator and a proud Jew at the same time. He served in the U.S. Senate as being a proud Jew. The famous Joseph Lieberman. He wrote a book on Shabbos, and the whole book is about how could I serve in the U.S. Senate and also keep Shabbos at the same time. America gives us the opportunity for that. So let's read text number 8. The sages say, when you come to a place, follow the local customs. This does not mean that we should compromise on Torah matters to follow local conventions, as many mistakenly believe, saying America is different. On the contrary, we need to leverage the local customs in a holy way so that local conventions actually advance us in a positive direction. Practical illustration. We see people walking in the streets with head coverings, most notably with their tzitzis outwardly visible. This wasn't done in Europe in the past, even among truly God-fearing Jews. As they lived among non-Jews, they didn't display their tzitzis outwardly. Yet nowadays, we even see children walking with their tzitzis out as a matter of course. This practice is continuing to spread. This is in line with one of the conventions of America, the concept of publicity. Tzitzis are being publicized and people are not embarrassed to wear them. Since the verse regarding tzitzis says, "You shall see them and remember God's commandments," they are wearing them visibly at all times. The sages say that tzitzis to display our master's seal on our person. So people are displaying them to all and publicizing them. This is one of the local conventions that can advance us. This leverages the American traits of boldness and publicity in a holy way. So America, people and causes express themselves loudly, publicly, and without fear or shame. And this, the Rebbe advocated that we should live our Judaism with the same attitude, displaying it publicly and proudly. And he's giving this an example, but the truth is anything. Living proud, having menorahs in public, or whatever it is, that we don't have to be ashamed for being a Jew. On the contrary, this country is giving us the ability to live freely as a Jew. And while there may be those that are trying to get in the way of that, we have to remember that we have the rights that we have. And so the Rebbe saw this as a positive development. America is proud, extroverted country. He taught and practiced a Judaism that should reflect and confident in spirit. Every year there was whenever Lag BaOmer fell on a Sunday, there'd be a big parade in Crown Heights. He would proudly display a big American flag and a flag for and they would go march in the streets with all kinds of Jewish pride messages. They even had the United States Army who would come and do a display there, some of the army, sometimes the police. They had all kinds of displays, but it came together with Jewish pride. The Jewish children would march in the streets. You have a message of Jewish pride. Maybe we could show you a video of that as well at one point. But this was the idea that we're given the opportunity to live proudly as Jews, and this country is affording us that, not only because they are tolerating us, but on the contrary, they're fully accepted as citizens. So now let us end off with a few lessons with 4 words. The first one is gratitude, pride, responsibility, and opportunity. So the first one is gratitude. America has been incredibly kind to the Jewish people, has afforded us opportunities that are unprecedented in our history. We must feel and show enormous gratitude for this. We have to be thankful. And we also have to give back. We have to, give to our country, pay our dues to our country, and be thankful to our country for what this country has given us. The second thing is pride. The founders of America, they drew so much inspiration from our Torah. The knowledge should fill us with the Jewish pride, that we're proud to be a Jewish American, that we appreciate being a Jewish American, and that we know that this is who we are. Number 3 comes with a responsibility. The responsibility is understanding that America is a covenant that needs to be continually sustained by society. It means that we bear the responsibility We need to be asking ourselves, what can I do personally to help people around me, to strengthen my community, and to do better, not only as a Jew, but also as an American? What can I do better as an American and as a Jew? Putting those together, putting the two together. And finally, opportunity. The freedoms and character of America give us these unique opportunities to make Judaism grow and flourish here like never before. We have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to take advantage of that? What am I doing that I have the ability that my father or grandfather or mother or grandmother could not do because they were wherever they lived in Europe or wherever they came from? And yet I have their ability to accomplish something that they did not have. And so I have to ask myself, how am I using this opportunity? And so this hopefully has left us with some powerful feelings, much to think about. And of course, you talked about the, what did you say, John Adams, that he studied the Talmud? Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson. There's a lot more there as far as Jewish history, and that itself is a whole course for itself. But we don't just want to learn about the American history, but also Sinai and civics to see how that affects our Jewish traditions as well. So 1 second, let me just finish off here. So we have these powerful feelings, much to think about. And so we're going to continue on the next of a 4-week journey, which is now going to be in every other week. And so I'll see you in 2 weeks. That will help us underline these points from fresh new angles to build and further our foundations of who we are as Jews and who we are as Americans. Yes, you had a question? Responsibility and opportunity. So we're going to watch the key points. Next week, we're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence, and specifically about what it says about that all men are created equal. Before I get to the key points video, I'm going to show a brief video about which has the previous Rebbe receiving his citizenship. Not playing, 1 second. Sorry, 1 second. Let me do this. Oh yeah. This is 1949 full color video.
So here, this is a delegation from the court arriving for the Rebbe's citizenship proceeding. They're greeted by Rabbi Kafanovsky. The Rebbe's Rebbe is serving refreshments. So, the previous Rebbe. The Rebbe's son-in-law and successor, the Rebbe, joins.
That is the Rebbe in Sarawak, a lot younger than some other picture you've seen.
Same Kramer. Supreme Court Justice Leo Reifel holding the register for the Rebbe to sign. You'll see Rabbi Harakov for a second on the top left. And this is the Rebbe's Yechidus Siddur, his private study. In honor of it, Congress passed a special law that citizenship could be granted in a private residence. Look at the gentle way the Rebbe was assisting his father-in-law. Many of the students of the time speak about the Rebbe's tremendous respect, awe really, in his father-in-law's presence. Rabbis Shalom Goldschmidt and Yisrael Lord.
I know they want to stop it,
Wenn der Rebbe sitting,
in a private residence.
this Rebbe, der Ramash, der time, the way he was sitting mit der Zerbitel, nicht kein Wort uns gerät, like, sits in front of the secretary, that's the way he was sitting, in front of the Rebbe, all the time.
When he sat upstairs by the meal, he used to try to help his father. So the Rebbe used to vacate his phone and talk to him. So there was a train, was to pull on the train. But I was pulling the stick in the station. A lot of respect in every word. He had this little diddle that it still be the husband that moves into it. Respect, courtesy, subordination. That's Yisrael Chanowitz. Judge Philip Kleinfeld. In between the two judges are two clerks of the court. Sinadel, America's Minyonishiner, in the back there. The petition for naturalization.
They look normal, but the fur hat that he's wearing, he only wore on just this initiative. So he put it on as a very special occasion.
The Brown House is the famous Yiddish writer, Nissim Gordon, who wrote a beautiful account of this event, the prominent Yiddish newspaper, The Pilgrim.
Or for they're tall, that is favorite in fall. Saying who all the people are in this.
The Rebbe treated this as a very special event. He's wearing his shtreimel, which is reserved only for special occasions. That's the signature card. The Rebbe is getting ready to take the oath of citizenship, and the Rebbe explains it to his father. Rav Zed, I understand that just 3 days later, after this occurred, you had the merit to be in that room with the Frierdiker Rebbe on the occasion of your appearance. The Frierdiker Rebbe held out his tzitvis for you to kiss. Yes, that's true.
The prison he actually
Mark, Mr. Antonelli signs and hands the Rebbe the certificate, and the Rebbe thanks the contingent. Says, Abraham, our patriarch, left Aram, which was a self-indulgent land. When he arrived in a place focused on compassion, producing and sharing, he said, this is where I'd like to settle. Similarly, I found this country, a place of compassion, accommodation, and freedom. As an American citizen now, I'd like to thank the United States government, headed by the president, for its kindness and efforts in saving me from Hitler's hands. I give my blessing that the United States may have peace and success. Kramer asks the Rebbe to reenact some of the proceedings so that the photographers may get better pictures.
I think that the gym today, which is preserving and producing videos of the Rebbe at such a high level, this film is very special to me. You know, the Rebbe himself arranged this event, and he did this recording of his Rebbe at the highest standard of that time. In 1948, it must have been a major feat to bring a film crew to 770 to record this high quality color film. I think it's a must. The Rebbe was the first to do this. And he set a very high standard for how to value and treat these special moments.
1949. Yes. Unfortunately, he passed away the following year. But I'm just gonna. No, he also immigrated. Yes, they both became citizens. That's correct.
Yes, I'm not going to see the green.
One second. I wanted to show the last video, which is just the key points.
This is one. The foundation of the continent. 1. America has been a remarkable blessing to the Jewish people. Time and again, Jews have arrived on its shores as refugees, destitute and destined, and achieved incredible success. America has accorded its Jews something unprecedented in Jewish diasporic history: acceptance. 2. The Pilgrims' worldview was shaped by their belief in a God intimately involved in their world, seeing divine providence, miracles, everyday events. They viewed their journey to America through the lens of the biblical story of the Exodus, seeing all the hardships they endured as trials faded. 3. The Pilgrims' first political was creating the Mayflower Compact, combining themselves to form a society and pledging to create just laws for the good of their society. Unlike most nations, which were formed through conquest or gradual evolution, America was formed by a conscious covenant of promises its people made with each other. 4. The Pilgrims were inspired by the example of God's covenant with the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, which preceded the establishment of political structure. 5. Sustaining a covenantal society requires the continued investment of the people of each succeeding generation. 6. We can live full and unapologetic Jewish lives just as our ancestors did for thousands of years. Moreover, we can leverage the American spirit of individualism, personal initiative, and boldness to make Jewish life flourish like never before. 7. Judaism had a pivotal influence on American style. This is a key reason why America has become so successful, and why it has afforded us Jews such great success in it.
Conclude lesson 1. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you those who join us online. We'll have to get you a book for next time.